It's Thursday, it's 6 o'clock, and that means one thing only. One thing only. It's time for the ABC of CBD with Ollie Mammon. This is going to be this is episode 41, which is amazing. But this is going to be a very interesting episode, and I'll tell you why. Because for 41 weeks, we've spoken about the perils of opioids versus everything that Ollie does and stands for. And I'm currently on opioids because of my smashed up back. And I am now today, it's ridiculous, the living proof of everything that I've been saying I didn't want to be. Boy, they mess with you so bad.
I'm so sorry.
It's a horrible thing. I'm not saying it for me because I'm not looking for a pity party, but it is just fascinating. It just reinforces everything that we've been talking about on this award-nominated show. Welcome to Men's Radio. You can hear the show all over the place, and of course, always watch it again on our Men's Radio YouTube channel. I'm probably going to be much quieter this week than normal. That's if I make it through the hour. But anyway, without further ado, let's put you over to the Count of Cannabis, the hunk of hemp, Ollie Mammon.
I love that introduction. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 41. I want everyone to kind of wish Russ better from wherever you are in the world. If you could take a minute and just be like, Russ, I wish you better, because, you know, he's poor dude suffering and I don't like seeing my friends suffer. So if we can all say a little prayer or, you know, send in best wishes virtually, it's a nice thing to do. So Russ is going to be quiet this week, which means basically you've just got me. Russ might actually end up dropping off if he's in pain. We've given him, we've allowed him to do so. So if he does disappear, don't worry. He's not skiving. He's allowed to leave. This week we've got a great guest on. We've got a great guest on. His name is Christopher Tasker. Like I said, it's episode 41. Before we move on with the episode, let's get a quick word from our sponsor, and then we're going to bring it all home. I'm sure you've heard before that good quality CBD needs to be really, really expensive. This is the new view of CBD. A product created by users for users. A product at an affordable price, available everywhere, at any time, at the simple click of a button. Just CBD and MCT oil. No additives, no preservatives, and no flavor enhancers. It's a simple subscription-based service. The cleanest possible CBD delivered to your door for the lowest possible price. Your product, your rights for the lowest possible price. Don't say it. So basically, I'm going to bring... Don't say it. So basically, at some point of the show, I'm going to try and bring Russ's situation into the conversation because, to be honest with you, we live in a world where cannabis is legal. Russ knows full well he doesn't have positive reaction to opioids, and there is no reason why he should be on opioids right now. He's actually told me he's been using his CBD vape pen to give him more relief because he doesn't enjoy the fact that he doesn't enjoy of what the opioids do. But we're going to move into that a little bit once we get the guest on. So our special guest this week is a gentleman by the name of Christopher Tasker. The episode title this week is Growing the Industry: Education, Innovation, Differentiation, and Evolution. Over the last few weeks, we have discussed the UK medical cannabis market. We have spoken with doctors and patients, suppliers and facilitators. We have learned that the UK medical cannabis system is foundationally flawed and that the market is therefore not growing and not progressing for the benefit of patients in the UK. The underlying rules governing the medical cannabis market in the UK are contradictory in nature. And even though medical cannabis consumption has been decriminalized, patients are still being forced into criminality to obtain their cannabis medication. Something is not right. Things are not progressing, strengthening, and developing as they should. In recent weeks, there has been a media campaign surrounding childhood epilepsy and the benefits cannabis can give these patients. We were lucky enough to be joined by Hannah Deacon a few weeks back, who made an open plea to government for the UK medical cannabis system to help child patients and to help their parents more. Why is this the case? We live in a country where the rules say one thing and the practices say another. We live in a country when one thing is said and another thing is done. The UK medicinal system is told to back cannabis, support cannabis, and promote cannabis, and the opposite is done. Doctors still remain anti-cannabis. Cannabis is not even seen as a last resort drug. And any research or proof that cannabis helps patients seems to get ignored, dismissed, or rejected. On the rare occasion that a patient manages to get a prescription, we see families struggling financially to cover the costs, families struggling emotionally on their unsupported journeys, and families being left alone to cope without the community they need. Patients have been left to support other patients. Parents have been left to defend other parents. This is not right. People should not have to fend for themselves to keep their families alive. Over the next few weeks, we'll continue our discussion into cannabis and epilepsy as we're joined by Karen Gray, Matt Hughes, Ilmarie Thomas, and hopefully a few others who have all been in the media over the last few weeks. Our guest today comes at the industry from a slightly different perspective. Christopher Tasker has recently finished a medical research degree focusing on the theory of lab-based medicines. Over his time studying, he was appalled at the lack of cannabis education in the medical curriculum. The sheer lack of credible information and education shows problems down to the foundation of this new medical industry. How are things supposed to move forward when thinking is still backwards? How are patients going to receive what they need when the system doesn't even admit that patients could benefit from that? How can you change the authoritative way of thinking when the outdated, miseducated system doesn't want to adapt and evolve? Professor Mike Barnes made a point of stating that there are only several elements the medical cannabis system actually provides cannabis for. There are only a handful of different products that are being supplied. Imagine if there was only paracetamol, ibuprofen, antibiotics, and morphine. Whatever your ailment, you got one of those 4 medications. Nothing else was available. As patients, we would all feel helpless and undercared for. This is unfortunately the experience of many patients in the UK legal medicinal cannabis market, hence why so many patients remain illegal cannabis consumers. The main patient target market in the UK cannabis space is adult-focused pain management. This is where most of the money and the energy seems to be directed in this space. And as Dr. Rebecca Moore said, there are very few clinical psychiatrists working in the space, and as Hannah Deacon said and Professor Mike Barnes said, the BPNA has stopped a lot of pediatric participation. It's also important to mention that cancer patients receiving cannabis is unheard of. The current medical cannabis system is made up of several private clinics supplying similar products for similar ailments to similar patients suffering from similar problems. A lot of industry professionals in this new wave of medical cannabis entrepreneurs are heading in the same direction, trying to accomplish the same thing, trying to dominate the same part of the market, trying to help the same patients. But what about everyone else? Like the Sarah Godfreys of this world, who cannot obtain what they need through the current medical system. More of the same is not helping the patients. Patients with different ailments are not getting their equal treatment, equal opportunity to participate in this new legal system, equal opportunity to access this new legal system, and equal opportunity to become legal cannabis consumers. There's a big problem, and hopefully we can dissect it a little bit today. So let's welcome on our guest, Mr. Christopher Tasker, and we could take the conversation from there.
Hi, Russ. Hi, Oliver. Thank you so much for having me on. What a wonderful introduction. And I've got to say, Ollie, I absolutely love the advert. I've never seen such a creative advert for a CBD brand.
It's pretty cool, right?
Anything in the cannabis space.
But Christopher, I'm not allowed to mention the box.
Okay.
Because every week I love mentioning the box. Because
the Indiana Jones thing.
It's like the Indiana Jones. It's the Holy Grail, or it's something. And Ollie, after 41 weeks, is
Stop
going.
It.
Stop
it now.
Gags. Stop with the gags. All right, sorry. Off you go.
What do you think about my introduction? Do you think I was a little bit too harsh, or you think I'm bang on the money?
I think it was very real, Ollie, and it's very hard to speak openly from within the cannabis industry if you are working for a company, or the term I like to, well, I've heard and have been sort of recoining is drinking the corporate Kool-Aid. And the sort of cannabis industry at the moment is in a bit of an echo chamber, and it does really take that sort of very real perspective, an honest perspective as well, to really sort of start changing perspectives and changing ways of thinking. And until we talk about some of these issues as well, they won't be recognized and brought to fruition. So podcasts like this and radio stations and conversations like this are essential. And it's the only way that this picture is going to change, and that all of the sort of issues that you've rightly pointed out are going to start moving forward and maturing. And so that wonderful gentlemen such as Russ, again, have more options than the few treatments that are available to the masses at the moment. You very rightly pointed out that cannabis is something that only a very small number of people can actually access sustainably at the moment, and a lot of people are paying quite heavily for the privilege of that. And so again, the accessibility of it, the sort of hidden challenges that patients face, are all absolutely integral topics to why this industry exists in the first place. It is for the Karen Grays, it is for the Sarah Godfreys, and it is for the Hannah Deacons, so that, again, patients and people are improving their standard of living and quality of life. And by denying people that this medicine, and what, again, at the end of the day, it's a plant, by denying people access to nature and a natural cure, and I say cure, a natural treatment for quite a number of conditions, then I think we're doing ourselves all a great disservice. And it could be your mum, it could be a grandma, it could be your auntie or uncle one day that could be using this, or even, God forbid, it could be yourself that needs it one day. And so the sort of lens of prohibition that we're looking through all of this cannabis conversation at the moment is really sort of holding back what progress and innovation and technology and new medicines and breakthroughs that are all there and all there to be discovered, but we're just sort of burying our heads in the sand at the moment, and down the sort of rabbit hole of prohibition and a very sort of binary way of perceiving drugs, cannabis in particular. But it really opens up a whole can of worms once you get into cannabis. You get into plant medicines and personalized medicine, and you start seeing that one size doesn't fit all, and one treatment isn't going to fit everyone. And going back to the sort of endocannabinoid system that you mentioned and alluded to there, Ollie, that's like a fingerprint. Everyone's body, we've all got fingerprints, but everyone's cells and everyone's body is as unique as a fingerprint. Don't get me wrong, the physiology is pretty standardized, but how that physiology reacts at a microscopic scale, incredibly unique. Again, everyone's DNA is slightly different, but
it's the same with everything, as in like break it down to like simplicity. All right, how you handle spicy food as opposed to your compadre, and you guys go out for dinner. One person grabs a hot sauce, one person doesn't, because hot sauce blows one person's brain open and doesn't do it to the other person. And I'm saying it's like as humans, we are all very personal. And if you look at our lives, the way we live on a daily basis, we all, put on our socks the way we put on our socks. We say it's the same way, but it's all individual. We all dress the way we dress. We eat the way we eat. We're all very personal people. But unfortunately, when it comes to medicine, you mentioned this term echo chamber. I've heard it a lot over the last few days, and it's not really a term I've ever heard before, but in the last 3 or 4 days, everyone keeps on mentioning it. And I think it applies a lot. You go and see a doctor and it's an echo chamber. You say an ailment, they give you the exact same treatment the 17 other people before them have been given. And it's this whole idea of, there's like the same information is just going round and round with nothing new. The same applies to our industry. When we talk, it's like the same information is just going round and round and there's nothing new. And this idea of basically living in this echo chamber where there's no novel thought and there's no thinking outside of the box is it's a bit upsetting. And also you think about the fact that it's so easy to think outside of the box, and it's so easy to see people as individuals because they are. Why is it not happening? Like I look at you, Chris, and I don't see Russ. I see Chris and I see Russ. And if Chris was suffering with something and Russ was suffering with something, you're two completely different people. It's logical. Why are doctors not? Why are doctors not? Why can't they just see that? Do you understand what I mean?
Because
massive
time constraints as well. And before Christopher answers that, not one but two people watching from the United States from completely different areas of the USA. So hi to Clark Gilbert, who says good evening. what is your opinion on the effects of CBD on tinnitus, which is that awful ear thing? And from California, from Santa Monica, Gloria Miller, morning all. Well, it's 6:15 over here, and it's great, and it's lovely. And then from 2 completely different states in America, up to Edinburgh in Scotland, just saying hello to Veronica Curran. It's always nice to acknowledge the people who follow the show so closely.
And little markers of where our audience are. I like it.
Absolutely, and also, and Christopher and Ollie, maybe later in the show, you could look at your views on CBD on tinnitus, because that's obviously something that Clark is concerned about. That was it.
So what I want,
why is it an echo chamber?
So actually, what I actually want to do is, I don't want to get too distracted. The main thing is Chris has got a beautiful brain on him. I mean, he really does. And every time he speaks, it's like music to my ears. He's also educated. Okay. And it's very important. Like I've stopped saying this in recent weeks, but I said it in my earlier episodes. I'm not a scientist. I am not a doctor. I'm a guy who had problems, and I went out there and started designing CBD products. My understanding of cannabis is very much a hands-on understanding, and it's something I've learned along my journey. I'm not educated in this space conventionally, and I don't have a degree. Chris has actually been through a medical education of sorts, and he has like I said, he's seen almost a system from within. He's got a bit more of an edge to him, and I think like what I want to kind of get that a bit out of him before we start moving into the generic conversations when me and him can get lost for hours talking about random facts, which most people will be like, why are they talking about this? So I just want to say, look, how did you get into this space? How has this all started, Chris? How old are you? As in at what moment of your medical degree did you have that light bulb moment of cannabis can be something? As in like how's your journey into this space? Like how did it happen? The emotional journey you went on to get to where you are right now. Like, how's it happened?
It was really all by accident, I've got to say, and it wasn't exactly like I was scrolling through the internet searching for this myself, because it was really just a complete shock to me. It started in the final year of my medical research degree. Looking, we had the opportunity to basically specialize in an area, and I was very fortunate and just caught my eye, CBD in the gut, and I was thinking, what? CBD in the gut? What is that? CBD, cannabidiol as in cannabis? So I looked a bit more into it, started Googling, and that's really sort of what opened up Pandora's box almost of ideas and reading. And I'd never, it had never even occurred to me that it was something that people would legitimately research in medicine. The other options were, say, playing with like early worms and forms of worm that were being sent to NASA and into space to do like zero gravity testing. So there's all sorts of crazy research subjects going on. But for some reason, I was like, again, going back to school, I'd gone to an international school, which was very conservative, but also very liberal in the sorts of ideas. And they really incubated that sort of questioning and theory of knowledge. And I'd always found cannabis this just hilarious plant at the end of the day. I've always found drugs and the way people treat drugs quite hilarious, because I just think like they're inanimate objects at the end of the day. Cannabis is just a plant, and it always intrigued me why people were so offended or freaked out, and that whole sort of reefer madness mentality had never reached me. I'd just sort of been a secondary consumer, I guess, of be careful around drugs, say no. But getting into that medical research degree and seeing that was even an avenue, that just sent me off on a complete tangent in life. And
you weren't a medical cannabis user, or you weren't a cannabis user before this?
It wasn't even a thing.
And you weren't a recreational cannabis user? If you went to a party and someone passed you a joint, you weren't the first person to be like, give me that?
It was there. It was around. Part of university life, but I'd never taken it seriously as a medicine. And again, for then my classmates and people and housemates to go, Chris, what are you studying at university? What are you researching at the moment? I was like, oh yeah, cannabis, CBD. And then telling the parents as well, that was another sort of coming out story. Oh, I'm specializing in cannabis medicine.
Mum, Dad, I'm taking all of your hard-earned cash and I'm spending it to learn about weed, okay? Hope you're proud of me.
To top things off, Ollie, I come from a family who everyone's got a background in law enforcement. So auntie, uncle, policeman, dad's policeman, grandpa's police.
Amazing.
So
and then your
was,
little Chris here comes along. Is like, I'm gonna do it, Mum. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna break the family mold. Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, hear me out, guys. And it didn't click for a while, but I guess, yeah, once you start showing people your essays and, oh, do you want to come to the lab and have a look around and see what we're doing? It's not, because everyone gets the image of, oh, medical research, cannabis research, you've just got loads of plants in the lab and, oh, that must be great, just smoking weed all day. Well, it was culturing cancer cells, culturing human tissue, and looking at the physiological responses of those cells and of those tissues and seeing how these cannabinoids work at the cellular level. So it wasn't, yeah, oh, what does this do? Or, oh, I'll try that one and give it a go. But it, again, completely by accident. I remember, and Saoirse O'Sullivan's an incredible sort of professor and researcher and incredibly knowledgeable in the area. And I just mopped up everything I possibly could from the wonderful lab group that she'd built around.
Amazing.
And but again, that sort of research was looked at like schizophrenia, like, oh my god, these poor people researching cannabis have lost their minds. What are they doing? Why would you do that? And again, can
I just cut in quickly?
Yeah,
go. So basically, one of the biggest points which we've discussed over the last few weeks is this whole idea of this demonization of cannabis. And I just want to just ask it. So you have this researcher you found at your university who's focusing on, you said, rectal cancer and cannabinoids, right? That's what she was focusing on.
That was what I ended up focusing. But
fine, sorry.
Professor O'Sullivan was looking at basically the vascular system. So all of the research going in there was looking at cannabinoids and the endocannabinoid system and various bits of physiology. So someone was looking at stroke in the brain and the way cannabinoids could aid stroke and the reperfusion of dying tissue.
How was she viewed by her colleagues? How was she viewed by her colleagues?
I can't imagine. Well, as I'll say, first of all, as being a female, not myself, but being a female in academia is a rarity and a challenge in itself, and in business as well. But as a cohort of researchers, people looking in that field, and again, it started off with like 1-2 people, the Raphael McCullums, the Roger Pertwees of the world, who are really well worth looking at. And it really tells an incredible story of the science, because this was something that the only reason you could research cannabis and at all was to look into the negative effects of it. And through looking at that, we discovered that THC was one of the molecules that was activating something in the body that was causing all of these effects. And again, this was all, it's hard now, but I couldn't imagine 50 years ago being one of the very few people in the world that are taking this seriously and going, no, there's something to this, guys. Take it seriously or just sit back and watch. But it's really has been, and it's definitely getting better, always been improving, but historically it's been something that's, and same goes with psychedelic medicine as well.
You're not answering my question, Chris. How did her colleagues respond to her? I'm just curious. I'm curious. And like in this department, when everyone else is looking at worms going to space and, you know, how long a piece of broccoli can survive at minus 95 degrees if it's given the AIDS virus. Do you understand what I mean? In that world where this is happening and she's studying cannabis, how was she viewed and how was she perceived by her colleagues? As in, she was your professor. You must have seen how other professors reacted to her. Did she get the respect she deserved, or was she?
100%. She was a very well-renowned researcher and prolific in the field, and that's what's gained the respect of her colleagues, is like demonstrating that.
Good.
But to the everyday person that didn't know her, they'd go, "Oh, cannabis research. God, what's she doing? Or waste of time. Or idiot doesn't know what doesn't." Lunatic, basically. And it's something that's always been dismissed, and it's something that's always been brushed under the rug. And again, for a lady to be challenging the status quo in a field that's a challenge in itself already, and really inspiring, and very lucky to be exposed to that sort of environment. And that's why I really enjoyed it, was just, again, the pretty out the box nature of it, and again, the uniqueness, the how sort of controversial it was. That's what I really enjoyed.
So when you started
into the cannabis
So
clubs.
so you're at this uni, you're studying. You found a like a professor who's kind of driven on a different direction. You basically cling to her and absorb everything you can from her like a sponge, and then you go off and you do your own research project into prostate cancer and into rectal cancer and cannabis. Now, when you first started I assume it was a 3 or a 5 year degree.
It was 3 years, and then I stayed on for 2 more years to finish off the masters in research.
So when you
5
started,
in total, I guess.
what I'm trying to get my head around here is when you started, I assume there was her. She was like a singular, the only one studying cannabis. And then there was you underneath her. By the time you left, had that grown? As in, was there more than her studying cannabis and more than you beneath her? As in, is the system growing in terms of research around cannabis? Or did you see the system progressing in terms of research around cannabis? Be honest. If you want to say no, it sucks.
No,
they're letting me down. Be honest, because we need the honest answer, Chris.
For researchers at the moment, it's piss poor, the support that you get for cannabis research. And again, particularly when we were doing our studies, the number one issue was always the ethics boards and the ethics committees and getting it past the internal structures of the sort of medical hierarchy, the university hierarchies, and again, breaking the sort of molds in that sense. It took 6 months, 9 months plus to get the ethical approval for the studies that I was wanting to do. And that was simply taking tissue from patients with colorectal cancer, taking a tumor and testing the tumors basically outside of their body. And these tumors were being removed anyway. Well, they couldn't wrap their heads around, first of all, a cannabis molecule and a cannabis drug. Everyone hears cannabinoids, cannabidiol, canna anything. They think skunk, a joint, or reefer, or whatever it is. And so getting past that preconditioning almost of, and again, it wasn't just the ethics committees. It was then going into the pathology lab and going, look, can I steal one of your pathology experts to cut up colon for me so I can take tumors? Oh, what research are you doing? Oh, cannabis. Oh, that's interesting. I don't think we'll be able to help you out much with that. And then,
but why would they not help? As in, this is why I'm just trying to get my
head
around it.
Some were super interested, and then this is what I was going. I mean, we were just about to scratch on earlier on.
If my neighbor asked me to borrow a cup of sugar, I don't turn around and say, "Well, what are you doing? Are you baking cookies or a brownie?" Because if you're doing a brownie, mate, you can't have it. You can't have it if you're making a brownie.
What we should have done is rename this episode "The Only Way Is Ethics."
I really like that.
Thank you very much.
I really like that.
In California, I'm sorry I'm so quiet, but if you knew what
the pain he was in.
Now, Gloria Miller in Santa Monica, California, is saying this, and I don't know whether it can go up on screen or whatever, but I'd be interested in her stroke brain research. Can I find online? It's always good when we're expanding out, so I have no idea. Chris, do you think there's some way
what
that
I would
Gloria can find out?
recommend? What I can do as well at the end is if anyone wants to leave notes or messages or message me on LinkedIn, I put together little portfolios for patients and things like that. So it'll be a summary of all of the research on that disease.
Is that cannabis. On LinkedIn? Chris, you're saying that's on LinkedIn?
Yeah. Message me on LinkedIn or leave an inquiry on our website or message me on Instagram or anything like that. And I'll put together a portfolio for those who want.
Oh, brilliant. So Gloria, I don't know if you're on. Great. If you're on LinkedIn, Glow, have a look and you can see all of Christopher Tasker's stuff.
Global Cannabinoid Solutions is the truth.
Global Cannabinoid Solutions.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Fine, just making sure.
It's a bit of a pickle to spell, but it is bang on there, Ollie. And
you're the truth, man.
For any other patients looking for info as well, we've got some education programs, we've got some books, but for patients, we try and put out as much free information as we can. So we've got patient sections coming, but if you send me a little message or email, I'll happily put those together. It takes me
marvelous.
Very little time.
Thank you.
So let's go back to the madness. Okay, so you're in your lab, you're studying something. It's taking you 9 months to get approval to do a research experiment where no human being is coming into it. So basically,
Yes.
you're taking one pot of culture, you're taking another pot of cells, and you're mixing them together and hoping for the best. And for that, you needed ethical approval. What year
Yes.
did you do this? What year did you do this study?
2019.
So cannabis is legal.
2019.
Cannabis is legal in the UK because it's 2018 cannabis became medicinally legal. So cannabis is medicinally legal. You are just researching. You're not giving Russ a concoction you've made in your lab. That's not your research. You're working in little dishes, and it takes you 9 months to get approval. It just doesn't make sense.
Here's some of the nuances of that. So what was going on was, say, Russ was coming. I was meeting Russ. Russ has colorectal cancer and he's going for a surgery. I'd go and meet that patient just before the surgery and say, look, I'm doing some research into cannabis, cannabinoids, and future treatments for colorectal cancer. Would you mind if I took a piece of your tumor once it's out of your body? And most people were like, yes, take as much as you need, treat it whatever you want. Make sure no one else has to go through this hell that is colorectal cancer. And by the way, there are the only cure really for colorectal cancer is to cut it out. Chemotherapy challenge.
Chemotherapy usually causes testicular cancer 3 years down the line, doesn't it? Because they can't target the they can't target the rays properly.
It's the equivalent of carpet bombing, chemotherapy, and again, it takes its toll on the body in many ways. But with colorectal cancer, it's slightly
Chris, do you know how I described it in my autobiography? I said chemotherapy. It's like using a shotgun to take the top off your boiled egg. You'll take the top off your boiled egg, all right, but you will also destroy your entire kitchen.
Using a shotgun to open bottles of champagne, right?
Well, yeah, it's the same. It's the same principle.
It kills all fast.
We have a bit more fun with the champagne than with the eggs.
Cells anyway, but it's a horrible thing for someone to have to go through, and for there to be no other options really for people in that position. It's really quite.
I've got one more, by the way. It's like lighting a cigar using napalm. Yeah, you like that, don't you?
Basically,
blow your fucking face off. Great. Sorry for swearing. Sorry. It's like 6 in 40 episodes. It's not bad.
Turn my back for 1 second to go on LinkedIn.
So, Chris, carry on. Tell us about this unethical, ridiculous medical system that, unfortunately, the UK seems to be governed by. Carry on with the ridiculousness. My jaw's dropping.
Going back to 4 years ago, then, Ollie and Russ, pardon me. The challenge was that, again, like, we've got the resistance still in cannabis and amongst the medical hierarchy in the medical system. 4 years ago, no one had even heard of it. And when you're going through that process, talking to doctors, consultants, everyone else, you get quite good at persuading people and finding out what people need to know to fill in any sort of gaps. But what I really noticed was me talking about cannabis as a medicine and this endocannabinoid system that no one had ever heard about. They hadn't been taught about it in medical school. That scared the shit out of a lot of doctors. You mean I've been going my whole 30, 40 year career giving people drugs and I didn't know that this exists or that was impacting their illness? Like, imagine the rehashing of, and again, incredibly hard job being a doctor, incredibly challenging. And again, going back to the time, stressed, pushed, they've got everything in the world to consider.
So many burdens. I know I beat up a lot of doctors verbally. I don't mean to, guys. I'm just trying to persuade you. I'm sorry. I don't mean to batter you guys verbally. I just want you guys on our side. I'm sorry if I ever give you guys a hard time, and that's sincere. I'm sorry. Go on, Chris.
And Christopher, there's a very nice message to you from Mark Davis, who says, "This is great, Chris." Says, "This is great, Chris. Getting the word out and the promise of a brighter future and understanding of the benefits that the medical cannabis can provide." That's Mark Davis, corporate recruitment and customer relations specialist.
No,
thank you for listening. Go on, Chris. You got the mic.
So much, just melted my heart there, Mark, as always. Again, the cognitive dissonance of that, and it's a complete perspective change, and having to, again, then question everything you've done as a doctor and rethink and reperceive everything. I don't know everything, and I haven't had all the information that I possibly could have and should have. And there was a lot of anger as well. Like, well, if it was real, I'd have been taught about this in medical school. So the fact that you're telling me it now is crazy. I'm a consultant. I'm the head of cancer, or I treat thousands of patients a year. What do you know? I'm just saying there's medical research out there that is opening up a whole new avenue of medicine. It's something to be excited about. It's not a reflection of you, but it's a reflection of the world around us and the information we have, that this is we're just learning more and more. And this is only going to help you as a doctor to understand and break down and, again, treat your patients and open up some more options and hopefully improve some quality of life as well. But that's always what I've found with the resistance, and I feel what sort of fuels some of the resistance to the medical field is that, oh, we've been doing this wrong for quite some time, and not necessarily wrong, but we could have opened up some other options, and we've limited ourselves. And how many people may not have needed chemotherapy, or how many people may not have needed those opiates, or how many people
all of them
did we maybe not need to throw in prison for using cannabis? Like, it drums up so many questions, and
it's easier to keep them buried under the rug.
Well, yeah. And
what did you say?
It's easier to keep all of these fears buried under the rug than it is to face them.
I think I would just comment on this, that it's a little bit of a blanket statement.
Oh yeah, massive blanket
from
statement.
Ollie saying all of them. It's not all of them, but it's a very, very important question that our guest is posing. It's very important.
But it's also important to understand, Russ, that this is not new. So Raphael Mechoulam discovered the endocannabinoid system and isolated CBD and THC in like the early 90s, the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, America's had a cannabis system on the foundational level since 96. Like Germany's had a cannabis system since like 2004. Do you know what I mean? Like Slovenia had a medical cannabis system in 2004. Do you know what I mean? So you hear about this and you're like, all right, there's something. I understand doctors saying we didn't know, but we're trying to tell you. And they're still saying we don't know, and we're still trying to tell them. And there's only, I'm just trying.
What were the stats that excellent professor that we had on a few weeks back? He was a brain box of the first order.
Mike.
And he was saying, he's been through it, out of thousands that he'd seen or he knew, only a tiny percentage were looking at it.
Of course.
And the key question, which Ollie keeps asking quite rightly, Christopher, is why? Why? Because there's so much evidence. If I thought this was just snake oil and all you guys coming up with snake oil salesmen, it wouldn't be a show. It wouldn't be so successful. We would have had 41 episodes. But every guest is saying, and from all different walks of life and backgrounds and nationalities, pretty much the same thing. That's what's puzzling me. Ollie's would change my mind on the whole subject.
I would throw into that as well. Maybe there's a hidden, and this is what I've observed as well. 25, not saying that I know it all by any means, but I've got a pretty good awareness. And one of the things that I've noticed is that what drives this as well is vested interest, the hierarchies, institutions, everything. It all runs on money, and those financial strings are very tightly controlled and very hard to, change the minds of when there's facts and evidence there, if it's contrary to the financial implications and the potential financial upsets. Maybe patients start suing hospitals because they weren't able to access this. Like, the questions that this opens up, it is a Pandora's box, and you can see why people just want to shove it down and get rid of it, because there's a lot of problems.
Massive debates.
Two things, Christopher.
Please.
Number one, the last thing to be pulled out of Pandora's box was hope.
Oh.
If you knew that.
I didn't know that. I've not read the story.
Yeah, the very last thing, once the box was opened, to be pulled out was hope. My theory, based just on It's My Theory and listening to all of Ollie's guests is this. The great truth about life, if you want to know about most things, follow the money. It's always about the money. It's infuriating. It sounds like the most pathetic cliche, and 98% of the time turns out to be true. And my theory is this, and I'd love to know where you stand in it. When the tobacco giants realize that people don't want cigarettes as much as they used to, and they look at saying, well, what the hell are we going to do now? This is a multi-billion-dollar business. And they turn those tobacco fields into something else, i.e. growing hemp. That alone would be a seismic shift in the entire industry. And in the same way that you look at the old adverts for Chesterfield's cigarettes, and it says at Christmas, I recommend my patients smoke Chesterfields. And you go, what? And they're using real doctors. That's how it used to be. And I think that's eventually, possibly not in my lifetime, but you're 25, did you say? God, I hate you. But quite possibly in your lifetime, that could happen. But it's about the money. When they realize
100%.
that one revenue stream is going to decline dramatically, and the other revenue stream there is worth a fortune. And as Ollie's guests have said, you can get 3 crops a year, not 1, 3. See, I pay attention, Ollie. It always looks like I'm not listening. They realize, wow, this is financially very viable. And then you'll get the pressure groups and the lobbyists, and you'll see how the whole thing can twist, and it can twist quite quickly.
It's slowly unrolling, should I say? And it's definitely, I'd say, probably midway through that phase now, Russ. It's what we've got. Again, all the facts are there, all the infrastructure's there, all the knowledge and infrastructure's there. But again, it's what status quo is this cannabis evolution sort of shaking and stirring up. And again, you can sort of see psychedelic medicines rising now. Just drugs in general, we're taking a completely different view of drugs as a whole. Once upon a time, it was only the military that researched drugs, and that was to look at the incapacitation effects of it. So they go and give a bunch of soldiers LSD or something. Whereas now we're actually saying that, oh, we can use this therapeutically, but we just haven't been allowed to for the last 50 years. And so it's a complete paradigm shift. And one of the most interesting conversations I've had was with a chap called Darrell Bickler, who I would regard as one of the wizards probably of law and the language of prohibition. The binary nature of prohibition and the conversation, it's all in terms of legal and illegal. And it's paradoxical in itself, almost talking about like inanimate objects in the sense that, oh, that one's legal, that one's illegal, when the law is there to manage behavior. It's not there to decide that a check, like that tree is illegal now, or like it's not there to govern the environment. It's there to govern human behavior and human interactions. But what prohibition has done is actually indirectly inhibit humans and clamp down on human rights through, oh, well, they're using that drug, so they're a criminal. So we've been able to criminalize people by basically targeting drugs, but really we're targeting people. And so our whole, how many generations of people have been negatively impacted because of a criminal interaction or some sort of interaction with the authorities because of.
So you dropped this when we were speaking, Chris. You dropped this because there's actually a little note here, and I've actually got my pen on it because I wanted to bring it up. So there was 2 ways this conversation could have gone right now. It's like we can either go down Russ's route of the money, which I know is a big conversation which we can have, or we can go down your route of drugs. Now, one thing which is like we have this demonization fact which gets brought up every week. There's also this idea of the gateway. Okay, Russ is the first person to bring up this idea of, you know, cannabis being seen as a gateway drug, and half of the control measures around it are because of the fact that cannabis is a gateway drug. We've slammed the door on that a couple of times, but you brought something up that was quite interesting. You were bringing up the idea of trauma being the number one cause of any gateway passage. It's not about a gateway drug leading onto other gateways or leading onto other drugs. It's about trauma being this gateway to drug consumption. And you were saying about how children between the ages of 4 and 12 who undergo a serious traumatic event are more likely to go through said gateway of drug consumption than anyone else. And it's a completely different way of thinking, because it got me thinking how drug laws and governing laws could theoretically be the gateway precursor for trauma and substance dependency, as opposed to substance dependency being a cause and a gateway for later life trauma. Do you understand what I mean? It kind
100%.
of flips and
We've
reverses.
manufactured a cycle that perpetuates what we're trying to stop. And so we see a massive rise in suicide. We've got a massive rise in addiction and overdosing. All of these stem, and I say all of these, like it's a sign of an unhealthy society and a larger societal illness that we've got. Whether it's where you want to pick it out, you can choose. But a good example of what we're talking about here is in Teesside, like where I'm from. We've got the highest rates of drug overdose in the UK and the lowest standard of health. Everyone dies 10 to 15, 20, nearly 20 years earlier in the north in Teesside than they do
even now,
to someone
Chris,
even now, Russ. Even now, that's still an issue.
I thought you were going to say maybe because of diet, and I'm not belittling this, but you know, when I look at the stats, I thought maybe because of diet or whatever, maybe 3 to 4 years, and you're saying nearly 20,
15 to 20 nearly.
That is a shocker.
So if you compare to say Kent or Surrey to someone from Middlesbrough, our average male life expectancy is 65 nearly, compared to nearly 85 down south. And so we've got all of these north-south divides still that lingering. And again, the northeast, we've got incredible poverty, very few jobs and very little money. And so again, all of that poverty, all of that, again, all the jobs have gone, all that poverty compounds, you get social issues, traumas, parents getting arrested, or my mother's a prostitute, dad's a criminal, gangster, whatever.
You've done very well for yourself then.
I've been very fortunate that I've been.
That was a gag. Sorry.
You come a long way.
The opioids are messing up Ross's sense of humor today, guys. Don't take offense from it.
Well,
if he was smoking weed, he would be really funny, but he's using opioids, so he's not.
So he's now in really dark.
if that's not a reason to completely force and decriminalization Russ's sense of humor.
This show is not about me, Oliver Mammon.
No, I know. I just I like him. I miss you today, man. I miss you.
I'm so sorry. I'm doing my best here, fella. Doing my absolute best.
It's really messed up. We live in this world where we're told that there's a cause and an effect. All right. And because we're told over and over again that there's this cause and this effect, we believe that it's the case. As a sociologist at university, we were taught this over and over and over again about how society, has these causes and effects, and they create social degradation and they create social animosity and they create all of these issues, and it's all cause effect. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's like effect, cause, effect. Maybe there's an extra effect in there. The effect of something creates a cause, which creates another effect. And it's like it perpetuates from somewhere. It's like chicken or egg, what comes first? And at the end of the day, maybe something else, which is not the chicken or the egg, came first, which started this whole wave. You don't know. And the problem is we're only taught to see things the way we see things, the way they are, as opposed to the way they should be or what reality is.
Take everything at face value, I'd say. And you're exactly right, Ollie. The way I see it, and again, I'm 25, what do I know? But at the same time, these are all well-documented facts and phenomena anyway. So I'm just these aren't my ideas. These are things that I've learned and read, and
you're the keeper of the text. Exactly.
I'm just the messenger, we'll say.
Exactly.
It's what we've got, and seemingly is prohibition unfairly clamping down on people, further sort of marginalizing them because of their drug use. But that drug use typically and statistically will arise from traumatic events in your childhood. So adverse childhood events, or ACEs, experiencing 4 or more of those in your early life. So that could be a car crash, that could be a parent getting arrested, it could be anything traumatic. It could be someone getting heavily injured and grandma getting whisked off to hospital, someone dying in your early age. Those sorts of things there could happen to just about anyone at some point in their life. And imagine you're in a troubled household, in an impoverished environment, in a struggling community. That's going to constantly be happening. People getting stabbed, murdered, shot, whatever. That trauma predisposes those people to negative health and negative health outcomes later on in life. And I think the phone's ringing as well at some point, so ignore that, it'll go away.
But have you been involved in an accident that wasn't your fault?
He's back. He's back.
Here's the thing, Chris, I'd agree with a lot of what you're saying, right? But a lot of drug use, not cannabis, just for a second, but it's the middle classes. It's not the working classes doing coke. It's not. I know that's a side issue, and I don't want them all to blend into one thing, you know. But
I'll distill it down slightly differently.
You see what I'm saying there?
No, for sure. Because I guess at the end of the day, regardless of what your trauma is, you'll use some sort of drug in your lifetime. But therapeutically speaking, cannabis is one of those plants and botanical drugs that has a broad spectrum of effects. And so that's why people go towards it and tend to gravitate towards it, is because, again, you've got a biological driver in your endocannabinoid system. There are genetic influences from thousands of years ago that, like, this has been around us. It's part of our environment. We are historically typically used to consuming it. It's made our sails, it's made our clothes, it's made our ropes, and helped us get around.
Our bodies produce their own cannabinoids, which have the same structure as the cannabinoids inside of plants. It's there inside of us and has been since the beginning of time.
And so cannabis and all of these other drugs are now sort of, again, being looked at therapeutically. Cocaine is used in the dentist's chair.
Novocaine.
So the drugs in general, and the stigma, and I keep bringing all drugs in general, but cannabis, mushrooms, everything have been branched under this prohibition sort of box almost of thinking. We think of all of those in terms of illegal and damaging and different things. They're all just substances that our body absorbs and it produces an effect. Cannabis is one of those ones that we're just discovering now has, well, we've got an endocannabinoid system that is intrinsically linked to all of our cells and all of our health. The opportunity for that, outside of, again, decriminalizing, not persecuting people more so for it and perpetuating those sort of social harms and putting those people back into the criminal system, further traumatizing them, we're holding people back, but then we're also stopping people from being sort of treated in the future, improving future life. And so it's really, prohibition's this almost net that's been around society. It's been there with the best of intentions, I'm sure, but it doesn't seem to have been working. For the last 20, 30 years, what we've seen time and time again is the science showing that prohibition isn't working, criminalizing drugs in general isn't working, but also because of that, we've missed out on all of these medicines, all of these incredible cures that we're only now just stumbling upon. And the whole cognitive dissonance and why everyone's so, what would I say, averse to things like cannabis is because it opens up, again, that Pandora's box of, well, what else have we done wrong? And if we start listening to science in this area, we should probably start listening to science in all these other areas. And
I can imagine that being a huge problem, actually, especially in today's world with social media. If England was to turn around tomorrow, I've actually never thought about that, by the way. If England tomorrow turns around and they stamp cannabis as fully decriminalized, which means I can grow and I can grow for myself and Russ can grow for himself and I can go and open my own clinic and we can run this whole sort of like American style system, all the psilocybin people the next day will be like, well, we want our system. And all the ketamine people will be like, we want our system. And then you've got every other type of herbologist or botanist will also want their system. And it'll get to the point where, you know, like I understand what you mean. Like doctors then have to basically forget everything they've ever learned and go and learn everything about any type of herb ever grown and it's too much. I understand that, actually. I've never thought about that. It's like once you open this box, what comes flooding out? When you open, yeah, I get it. I've never thought about that.
You need to unpick this, because this is all about CBD. All right. So I won't endorse, on behalf of Men's Radio, I won't endorse you go out and, buy loads of cocaine or use
no, of course, no.
I'm completely
none of us
against.
do. None of us do.
But I really do see the medical benefits that Ollie over 41 weeks has so expertly woven. I really get that. Okay, but I think you need to unpick it a bit, Christopher. But in the last 5 minutes of the show, the worst thing about prohibition, because it makes it illegal, it makes certain people who have no right to be making a lot of money, it makes them a fortune. Whereas that money could be turned into a tax, which could go to help the NHS. It sounds ironic, but think about it. Or it could go to all sorts of things, schools, nurses, whatever it might be. Okay. But because it's in the hands of criminals, it's ridiculous. It's exactly the same principle, Christopher, of course, as the prohibition in the United States with liquor. And it made people like Jackie Kennedy's father a fortune. Black Jack Bouvier, as he was known. These guys who were large-scale bootleggers made millions and millions and millions, and it set them up for life.
It's something me and Christopher, we've talked about actually a lot, Russ, is about the money in this industry, about about what could be done in this industry if a what would be done for the patients, and B, what would be done for the economy. Me and Chris have spoken about this many times, and we see so many flaws in the way this system is built, because foundation is why I started in my introduction. Foundationally, the system is not right. Anyone throwing money into this system is all throwing it into the same direction. People like Chris who want to do a research project have to wait 9 months to get approval from an ethics board. I mean, the system isn't right. Now, if Chris was allowed to do his research, he might have found something groundbreaking, which could have put $100 million into the government's pocket. But the whole point sorry?
Who knows? We'll never know.
No, but the problem is
will you know eventually, Chris? Will it
I hope
eventually?
So.
You'll know eventually, though. It's not
scratching the surface. No. I've taken a step back now. My tenure's done. But I guess going back to CBD is just the very tip of the iceberg for this whole conversation. Like, we've gone into prohibition, we've gone into harm reduction, we've gone into local politics and adverse childhood events. CBD is just the tip of the cannabis iceberg, but also the whole conversation around medicine, drugs, how the laws thinking of all of this. And it makes you, again, we're now seeing that what we've been told doesn't quite match up with what the facts and the science are. And so the question is, do we keep going with this because that's the system and that's how it is? Or do we start, okay, well, we've got new facts now. Let's start maturing with this new information and expanding what we've got and doing it responsibly, because we've got the tools, we've got world-leading infrastructure in the UK. Why are we so scared of changing up? And it's not even changing our minds, it's opening our minds and growing our minds and adding and growing with what we do have. And so
because of the nature of the show, it's obviously based all around cannabis and hemp, etc. But you could really expand your argument's very valid, Christopher, because you could expand it to the automotive industry. All right, they have had the ability to create hydrogen power. It's not a myth. There are hydrogen cars. Hydrogen fuel cells, which is much better than electric power. It's a genius concept. They just can't get round to it, and more, and the manufacturers, mainly Honda, are just saying, it's too much money, forget it. It could solve it. And that's it's a parallel argument. They've got the knowledge. They've got the knowledge there. They could do it. It's been done. They just won't.
The same practices transfer over as well, Russ. What you see a lot of in pharmaceuticals and in the medical industry is, we're going to buy that technology, not because we want to develop it, but because it challenges our bottom line. And so what we're going to do is shelve that technology for 20 years, 50 years even, until it makes financial sense and until the market is right. And so what we need to remember is that we're all consumers in a market, and that market and the people that control that market feed that market with products. A lot of them are aware and thinking.
Christopher, we're running right out of time. I just want to thank you so much for coming on. I do,
Chris,
hope
we'll get you back on. We'll get you back on to continue the conversation.
There's so much more to discuss. Ollie, as always, bless you for this.
Very fast.
This is Men's Radio. I don't know where the hour's gone. It's been fun. Same time next week. Until then, stay safe.